And so those are all the reports that we're going to review. We're just going to have a short wrap up. Look like we're on time, even with all the foolishness that Marshall and Kyron subjected you to. I only blame Marshall and Kyron because I don't want to be fired. Yeah, you guys don't. Thank you, Marshall, for more foolishness. End of year 3 requires the submission of the sync, the SIRS, the SOF. That's your student incidents. The STAS, that's going to be used to determine chronic absenteeism. The student program, that's how we identify homeless students. Student English language acquisition, that's how you tell us when a student was reclassified. And then the student enrollment will exit the student, but of course, as Kyrie mentioned, the student enrollment record submitted throughout the year is used for cumulative enrollment. So it's quite a big data collection. Behavioral incidents for students with disabilities require EOY 3 to be approved by your SELPA in addition to your LEA. And again, there's no initial deadline. So that doesn't come into play until August or whenever at a time you're ready to certify. The date of the end of year is reflective of the entire academic year. Again, no census date. STAS exemptions are submitted in the STAS record. I want to emphasize that exemptions does not mean do not submit the record, but indicate they're exempt from attendance reporting within the record. Every primary and short-term enrolled student must have a STAS record. The one-year graduate counts are listed in reports 1.22 and 1.23. All students must be exited at the end of the year with a CERT or it will trigger CERT 131. So right now, many of you have hundreds, maybe thousands of CERT 131 errors. Until you submit your final exits, they will persist. The English language acquisition status is updated, used to report your RFEP students, as well as resolve CERT 067 errors. And then lastly, students that have a program of 191 record during the entire year or at any time during the year will be counted as homeless, regardless of their current living situation. So just to recap, what's the data used for, right? It's publicly available in DataQuest. It's used for metrics in the California School Dashboard. There are reporting requirements from legislation like the Every Student Succeeds Act, McKinney-Vento, and as well as Individuals with Disability Act. This is a resource side. It's been updated. The chronic absenteeism rate calculation has been updated for this year. I think it's just a change in the attendance days is what changed in the calculation because they've made different buckets.
Also, just to emphasize, there is no one-to-one correlation if you compare the dashboard to a report in CalPad. So this is what it basically infers to. So it's more of a trending in the dashboard based on data quest. But if you want to look at the specific report that impacts that, those are listed in these two PowerPoints.
Thank you, Karen. And then this, as Karen was saying, goes along with the suspension rate. So um, we focus on these two because, of course, you have your stats for chronic absenteeism, and then cumulative enrollment, and then you have your student incidents that to report your suspensions, and then you have your cumulative enrollment. So these rates come from end of year 3 data, so it brings an importance. How your score is reflected, EOY 3 has a lot to do with that. And then, of course, the impact of not certifying. I'm sure many of you have considered, forget this. I don't want to do it. CalPads is broke. I don't have time for this. Well, just if you ever question whether or not it's worth your effort, and I did. So there's not a submission in which it isn't important. I even thought end of year 1, oh, there's no big deal. And then I remembered for those districts that have CTE, it is a big deal. And so um, it just has to be reported. There's unfortunately no way out. And then we have suggested milestones, and they've all been compromised because of the post redevelopment and the fact that we created this slide in advance of end of year. So we're at the end of June, and it says submit and post files, review validation errors, and reconcile as needed. That's still relevant, right? We still expect you to be submitting and posting files. Um, that hasn't changed. 627 to 715 resolve certification errors. So we don't know if the certification functionality will be implemented within the next 6 days or not. But if you have certification errors currently, you can work to resolve those. The certification button and that functionality of approval won't be implemented until they can uh, find a way to get the DDs to be processing correctly, just so that they're attempting to allow you to have some degree of accuracy in the data that's submitted. So they want to get the data discrepancies implemented prior to allowing LEAs to approve and certify their data. Um, if you can, send reports to local data stewards. So uh, if you've completed end of year 2, if you've completed end of year 4 in July, there's nothing that would prevent you from approving and certifying, getting the reports reviewed by your administration. Um, Certainly, end of year 3 and end of year 1, you may not be in position to certify this month or next month. It may come down to the wire in August, but the point is each of the 4 submissions are unique and separate from each other, and they can be approved independently as well. And then in the month of August, we have no initial deadline, so we want to hopefully use August for small changes, update data as needed. Hopefully, you're not doing mass submissions, and primarily that's because um, you're also going to be enrolling students. You're going to start preparing for the next year in August if you haven't already. And then currently the certification deadline has remained unchanged. It's still your target date, 8/26. If you need any assistance along the way, we are there to help. So there's several resources. Kyron went over them. So just a resource slide. If you want to grab a link or something, that's good, but we're not going to talk about them. So I would always encourage you to submit tickets. We're pretty busy right now, but that's just par for the course, given the nature of things. If you are submitting files or records and you're having difficulty with functionality, submit a support request. If you're advanced and you know how to use the known issues, I would encourage you to search through the known issues first, then submit a support request. If you're not advanced, submit a ticket and we can help you identify if the problem is on your end or CalPADS' end. These are all the different methods in which you can communicate with us. The web form link at the top is the most direct and the fastest. The listserv down in the bottom in red is a way to communicate with your peers. This is good when you're having student information system functionality issues, or you're new and you don't know exactly how to use it, or your special education data system. So we do ask that you submit a survey. Martha always looks at and reviews the feedback, and we have powwows to make changes and to improve training. And so last but not least, we want to thank you for your attendance and your patience just with CalPADS, everything around it. We know it's hard work. We understand your frustration, even though we only get a fraction of it. So thank you.